Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. At one point, right? Where, I'm working 90 hours a week, right? And I'm all about the numbers, and I'm all about the numbers, and I'm all about the numbers. And all of a sudden it dawns on me, and actually it took somebody who is much older than me, didn't happen to be a family member, but somebody who's much older than me that pulled me aside and said, look, your quality, okay, what you're bringing every day, and in terms of looking out for other people and taking great care of them, that's why we do business with you. We don't do business with you because you do the most numbers of anybody else. We do business with you because you care more.
Right.
And it was like, all of a sudden, the light went on, right? And it was like, yeah, okay. But man, the world can just, because you know this, you go and you sit and you talk about who's produced the most, who's second, who's third, who's fourth, right? And I tell people all the time, be careful of the power of envy, because the power of envy will seep into your life, okay? And it'll try to change who you are.
Right.
It'll try, instead of motivating you the right way for the right reasons, okay? The right reasons aren't numbers, right? Yeah, they're a motivator. Yeah, it's something you can aspire to, but it can't change who you are. And that's what I love the most about your book. It's all through here. It's all through your book. You know what I mean? It's all interwoven in there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, that's something that people have to understand. And when you're stack ranked with numbers every single day, and you say there's 400 people in your organization, and you see number 1 all the way down to 400, maybe you're somewhere in the pack, you might just think that and what it does, Mike, is it takes your mind and your focus off what you should be doing, right?
Exactly.
And you start missing the fundamentals. You start worrying about others. You start envying all the things you just laid out. Mm-hmm. And instead of playing your game, and as God's kids, like, we should just go all out. We should live from our identity, not for our identity, right? And give it our best, right? And I think that's true success. That's part of true success.
So I shared with a buddy of mine who's now a sales manager. Okay, used to be in production. I just shared with him the other day. Look, instead of sitting down and going over your numbers and ranking everybody and and making people feel, however they feel about their numbers, right? What you need to be doing is asking them, who did you take great care of this week? Give me an example of somebody you went above and beyond for. Okay. I interviewed a coach. We have my kids went to a high school out here, Escondido Charter High School in Escondido. It's a tiny school. But their marks, their state standardized testing scores are number 2 in the entire county.
Wow.
Okay. And they're a public school, dude. They're not a private school, public school. Okay.
Yep.
And I interviewed the founder of this charter school. Okay. And my kids went to school there. I also interviewed their football coach. I've been the voice, the guy up in the press box with the microphone. You saw my photo, right?
Yeah.
That was me in the press box earlier this season, doing the play-by-play for the football team. I just finished my 11th season with them.
Amazing.
When I started, we lost nearly every game 55-0.
Okay.
We were terrible. Okay. A few years ago, 5 years ago, they went out and secured a coach who happened to coach football for the rival across, and he doesn't even like this term, rival, but the competitor, the other charter school across town, same town.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. They went out and secured him, and he came to charter And part of the reason he came to charter was because he wanted a ministry. He wanted an opportunity to pour into his players, and he did. And what's interesting about it is the quality of your manager, the quality of your coach is big, huge. Okay. Within the first year he was with us, we won 3 games. You'd have thought we won the Super Bowl.
Huh.
Okay. Because there hadn't been a season where we won 3 games.
Yeah.
The next season, we won the entire Pacific League Championship, and we won the Pacific League Championship 3 years in a row. Wow. Okay. What a completely different deal. Okay. Now, here's what's interesting. We interviewed him, his interviews on our podcast. We interviewed him. Where he came from was a 5-time CIF championship football team at a high school right up the hill from us. Okay. Public school, not a charter school, not nearly the level of education, but quality football. And they were all about winning. They were not about the athlete. They were all about winning. He got to a point to where he had a crisis of conscience. Now he teaches from the inside out, right? So he cares about the kids. He pours into the kids, and man, do they respond. Yeah. Okay. It's a completely different approach from the way sales has been taught and managed all these years to what you're teaching and what you're writing about. These sales managers need to be sitting down with these salespeople, and they need to be saying to them, look, talk to me about when you went above and beyond this week. Give me examples of where you took excellent care of somebody. Yeah. Because that's what we need to keep them focused on so they don't lose their identity.
Man, I'll give you a quick example. One of my reps, so I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and drove about 3.5 hours to Huntsville, Alabama the other day to meet with my rep for a field ride. And we went in with getting a partnership deal re-signed with this group. And we went in and quickly found out that the lead administrator was going through a divorce, and it was not the time. Right. And so from emotional perspective, like my rep kind of nodded at me and I nodded at him, and we just punted our desire. Right. We knew, that at that time, it was not the appropriate time to push what we wanted to move forward. Right. And we needed to cater to that individual's needs. And, my rep, I think he even said a prayer for her. Right. And so, it's things like that make all the difference in the world. And your customers, when you truly put them first, they see it, they feel it. And, it's the winning formula. And I want reps, despite all the pressure we feel, to really live the right way in their daily activities, you know?
And if they stay centered, if they stay within themselves, within what they're all about and what their mission is, right? Not the sales part, their personal mission. And it's the relationship, dude. You know this. It's the relationship. That woman will never forget that.
Never.
She'll never forget it. And there are times, like Coach was telling us in the interview, there are times when a kid will show up late to practice. Well, they have a zero tolerance policy. You can't be late for practice, right?
Yeah.
But they'll pull them aside and they'll say, okay, what's going on? What happened? How was it that you were late to practice, right? And they'll try and find out what it was that was going on. And they'll find out that mom was sick and, there wasn't any way to get a ride and you had to take the bus instead of, you know what I mean? Like, they'll figure out what's going on. And then all of a sudden they'll show up with chicken soup for mom as a team.
It's amazing.
Dude, there is no better way to manage. There is no better way to manage. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's what I love about your book. It's permeated throughout the entire book. So going all out, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So I talked about my story, right? So from a failed venture to, adversity as an associate, right? With my first med device company, where there were days where I would be grabbing dinner with my wife at working all day on a Monday, coming home 6:30 at night, and get a call and say, hey man, we need you to fly to Miami in the morning. You have a case starting at 7 a.m. Right. And so I would literally have to drop what I was doing, tell my wife like, hey, this is part of the duty. And so going from working, giving everything I had in my company, associate, to finally, call it 5.5, 6 years later, finally getting my shot to be a rep. I quickly knew that, I needed to go all out and prove that I had what it takes. And so, what I tell reps is after the end of those 2 years of being rookie of the year and then rep of the year and the best 2 years combined, we were then acquired by a big organization. And so your next year in sales is never promised to anybody. And so, especially when you're new to an organization, my advice is to go all out, prove yourself, right? And sometimes you have to kind of stretch the personal life and, maybe give up some of those personal activities that you want. It's not forever, right?
Mhm.
But I do think those first couple years when you're with a new organization are pivotal. And if you go all out, it usually pays off. You can kind of start get into a more balanced work life later on.
Yeah, balance is kind of an illusion. It's that
It
simple,
is.
right? So
It
one of the
is.
things that I found, and this is just from personal experience, but I've been married 29 years, right? And every time I had to get really imbalanced, I would sit with her first and say, look, you're not going to see me much. Okay. The
Right.
next 3 months, it's going to be nuts. Okay. I don't know when I'm going to be home. I don't know when I don't know if I'm going to be here for dinner, that kind of thing. Right. Just try and work with me. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. Right.
Yeah.
And as long as she was in there, as long as she was in with me, we were good. It was the
Yeah.
times when I didn't have her buy-in that's when this happens, right? And too many of
Communication.
us in committed relationships don't take the time to get buy-in.
Right.
So I sat with a guy the other day for our podcast, and he's created an incredibly successful company that's expanding massively right now. And
Wow.
one of the things that he's dealing with is his kids are starting to get older. And so they're starting to ask him, Dad, why are you gone so much? Dad, these other dads, right? These other dads are not gone as much as you are. Dad, right? And he's like, feel it, dude. He's starting to feel that guilt. Okay.
Yeah.
And what happened was I sat with him and I said, look, my kids are 23 and 25, right? But I said, listen, I used to sit with my kids and I would get buy-in from them too. Right. So when they were at something where dad couldn't be there because I had to be in Austin, Texas, or I had to be in, wherever, right? Seattle, wherever, they would say, Dad is building a future for us.
Wow.
Instead of, yeah, dad's never here, dad's never around, da, 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 da. Dad's out actively building a future for us.
Love that.
Completely
that.
different deal. And it felt different for them because they felt like they were a part of it. Right? They felt like they were part of the cogs in the wheel, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
That's good. That's really,
let's talk
really
about
good.
confidence for a second.
Yeah.
Something I lack tremendously, by the way. Can you tell?
No, you're full of confidence. You have the appropriate level of confidence, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. I think confidence is one of those things because I've lived on both sides of that confidence continuum, right? I've had too little and I've had too much. And so the story that I kick off was the story of Justin, one of my first really good managers that I've ever had. And Justin, would preach confidence to us, like believe in yourself, right? He was a guy at that time. I had the appropriate level of skills, but I needed someone to believe in me. And he was that guy. And he believed in me. There were times where he would brag to me to the CEO, to the CFO, co-founder and team, and he would always sing my praises and build confidence. And I think that's one of the best things we can do. And I really want the readers to hear is like believe in yourself, right? Most of the time, that's all we need to hear. In sales, we get beat up all the time. We get told no, and I call it getting kicked in the teeth, right? Like we get kicked in the teeth all the time.
Yep.
And I want them to know they just need to have some confidence and believe in their God-given ability.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I love this chapter. So the next one I'm all about, as you can tell, probably, right? Relationships are absolutely everything. Talk about that.
Yeah. So I talk about Big Jim from my church in Orlando, Florida, and growing up. And Big Jim would always be sitting in the back. And after church was over, I'd see his big smile, and he'd pull me in for a big, dude hug, right? And he'd always crack a joke or tell me a funny story. And week after week watching Jim, who's now very successful in the Lake Nona area of Orlando, watching him, that's a guy I can model my career after, right? And that's how we should it's like seeing your best friend for the first time. When we walk into customer accounts and don't act like traditional reps and maybe say, "What's up?" right? And bring someone in and bring that warmth that Big Jim showed me. I think a lot of times reps just need to kind of loosen up a little bit, stay professional, but loosen up and be kind of like Big Jim. And I kind of outlined some of those things in that chapter.
Yeah, and you know, humor helps too, right? But you want to
Yeah.
get to a point to where, like, I wrote a training called Power Connections, right? Because one of the things that frustrates me the most about realtors, what I do for a living, right, is
Yeah.
they stay here. They stay here because this is safe. This is politically correct. This is, you know, they're going to tell you what they think you want to hear. And I'm talking about prospects, right? When you start to dig and you start to you'll get to where the pain is. The pain is something that they want to try to avoid getting to. You cannot avoid it. You've got to be able to care enough to ask. People are dying to tell you. You just have to care enough to ask. And if you care enough to ask and keep asking, right, and keep digging and keep right, you'll get there.
Right.
It's literally covered with just layers and layers of political correctness, right?
Yep.
But eventually you got to get through those layers. You got to peel them back like an onion, right? So, and if you can do that, that's where you develop relationships that'll last the rest of your life. Those people won't work with anybody else because they've now confided in you. They've now shared with you their deepest, darkest issues, right? And it's a big, big thing when it comes to bonding with people. So
yeah, and give sincere compliments, right? I think in the book, How to Win Friends, Influence People, I think that's one of my favorite books outside of you know, the Bible and a few others, is like, man, you know, giving a sincere, genuine compliment. And I talk about that in this chapter, you know, when it's from the heart, right? And you call it out, it can make all the difference. And I talk about a deal situation in there with a administrator named Linda that I complimented because it was genuine, and I didn't do it from impure motives. I did it from pure motives, and it led to lasting business and partnership, right?
no,
And
I've
so
given people compliments before and they started crying on me. And some of them were grown men. Okay.
everybody needs a friend.
They just needed somebody to be kind at that moment.
Yeah.
That's right. They just needed somebody to point something out that was genuine, that was authentic, that was real. Yeah, it's a big deal, man. So let's talk about developing let's talk about developing an elite sales process.
Yeah, well, you said the magic word pain a second ago, right? And I think as salespeople, our job is to provide value, right, and to help our customers, right? So if you're not with a company that has products, services, solutions that actually mean anything to you, you should probably look for another job, right? So what's cool is I love the company I work for now, and developing an elite sales process is key. And I talk about an outline process that a guy named Todd Zog out of Tennessee created with his matrix solution. He gave me permission to use it. And when I found his sales process, I realized that is it, right? For me, you've got to have, I look at it as having good shooting form in basketball, right? Or if you're a good wrestler, good foundation in wrestling, or whatever your sport or activity is. If you don't have a good sales process, you are missing the boat. And one of the biggest things that I look for, obviously, you doing pre-call plan, right? Approaching the customer with rapport, kind of like, you know, we talked about Big Jim a minute ago, right? Genuine rapport. So after you do your pre-call plan on your account, approach the customer, identify pain is really the important thing. Pain is the only thing that gets anyone to move in life. And you've got to kind of sit in the pocket when it comes to pain, right? And let that play out. Try to understand. Don't assume you know what your customer's pain is, even though you probably have happy ears as a salesperson or are thinking you know. Understand the pain, ask more questions, and then there's a few other points that I give, and you know, demonstrating value, advancing the deal, and close and follow up, right? So I could write that on the back of a napkin, and in my opinion, you don't have to have the exact same sales process, but you should know your sales process so well that you could flip over a napkin and quickly bullet point it out. And I think the new generation of sellers need to kind of go old school with that, not be robotic with it, but to be sound with their sales process. So no matter where they are in the game of sales, they know kind of what stage they are in the process. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And, I think if you, and again, this is just my opinion. Okay. But
Yeah.
if you're really good at identifying need, if you're really good at finding that pain, the rest of it takes care of itself, right? Because you're literally sitting with somebody and going, look, I see where the speed bump is here. How can I help you get past it? How can I, with my product, how can I help you get to where we need to be? Right?
Yeah.
A lot of times, if you frame it the right way, they'll literally give you the solution. You don't have to come up with a solution. You just ask. You just ask. Right?
Right.
I spent over an hour on the phone with a guy the other day, completely by accident. I was looking for a property for my client to move into as a rental. So I called on a sign that was in his front yard of his house that was a for rent sign. I spent over an hour on the phone with him, and he asked me, I don't know how many questions in that hour. Almost all of them were about parenting.
Huh.
I have a 23 and 25-year-old. He has 11, 13, and 15-year-old. We went through the entire hour, and he literally says to me probably 18 times in that hour how brilliant it was the way I raised my children, because I used the Socratic method, right? Yeah. And he asked me, he said, so what did you say when they said this? And I said, well, I didn't say anything. I just asked them, right? I pulled it out, okay? He's like, oh, that's brilliant. My goodness, give me an example. So he's literally writing down these questions that I would ask my kids, okay?
That's so good.
At the end of it, I find out that he's the chief of staff of one of the biggest hospitals in San Diego County.
Wow.
True story. He's coming on the podcast, the whole thing. He wants me to come talk to his people, the whole thing. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And
that's great.
And it's literally just getting in the mode, right, of staying in curiosity. You stay in curiosity and you stay out of judgment. I would ask questions, quite honestly, John. I will ask people questions that most people, if they prejudge those questions, would never ask.
Right.
They'd never ask. But I ask them because I know where I'm headed, right? I know where I'm trying to, what I'm trying to find out and what this looks like, what this process looks like. And I know what my end result is, right? My end result is I'm trying to find whatever that pain is. Okay. And every time my kids got upset, every time they tried to get into an argument, I would bring them in and I'd sit them down. What's your job? Be nice. Great. Is what you just did to your sister or your brother an example of being nice? Well, what should you do? Not do it again? What else? Say I'm sorry, right? I didn't say anything. I just asked them, right?
Right.
They had to answer the question. What I found out, John, was later on in life, they got really good at resolving conflict. And not just with their sister or their brother.
Right.
Okay. Because we asked them questions. We pulled it out of them. Okay. Anytime you're trying to get to somebody's need and somebody's pain, just ask questions. Just
100%.
Right.
100%. I've coached some talented people and some of the most talented people need that reminder, right? They've heard so many of the same situations that they jump to conclusions, right? And it's just kind of staying in that kind of listening pocket that you just kind of outlined, and don't assume you know anything, because there are nuggets that you'll find out if you just continue to play dumb. We joke around and I say, I ask a lot of questions because I'm not the smartest guy in the room, right? Like I want to, so that's actually helped me be good at sales, because I don't know the answer and I don't assume I know the answer. So I'll ask those basic questions. And
2 ears, 1 mouth, baby. 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? I had my kids a few years ago. They graduated college, both of them, and they were starting their first jobs out of college. I said, I need you to print this up. Stay in curiosity, stay out of judgment, and put it up in front of the wall where you work, so you look at it every day while you're working. Stay in curiosity, stay out of judgment. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.